5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch.
Good evening, way backers. Hello to all of our viewers out there tonight. Thanks for joining us. My name is Adam Carter, and these are the Wayback Sessions. You know, the Wayback Sessions have been created in support of musicians of all genres to provide a place to perform that's safe for both the musician and the artist as we all move forward on our way back to sharing live music together. Now, my love of music and live performance has pushed me to go beyond the sounds that I would normally listen to and that I like, and into a realm of fascination that, in my opinion, has given me a good, provides an educational listening experience beyond things, I think. So my wish is that over time, everyone will explore on this journey with us and continue to listen to new things and explore music that perhaps we wouldn't always be listening to. Hopefully find something new that we like. So having said all of that, tonight is all about the love of the musician, the love of the music, and my pure fascination with the performance of it. I want to take a moment to thank everybody who's been watching, everybody who's been supporting and contributing. There is a donation link in the descriptions of the video if you are so inclined to support tonight's artist, the project, and the show. However, what we do ask is that if you are enjoying the show, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and every little bit helps. So it's free as well. As always, real quick, as always, we'll be monitoring the chats. So please contribute to the conversation, join in. We'll be checking it all throughout the night. So if you have any questions of the artist, of the studio, pipe in and let us know, especially if there's any technical issues. And speaking of that real quickly, some people have said that there were some issues finding that donation link and what was going on. So look at the drop-down arrow in there if you're struggling. Look at the drop-down arrow if you're struggling with that. Anyway, some other people have said that they're streaming on their television, they're streaming on their computers, tablets, laptops, and they're using a different device like a phone in order to scroll through and join in the chat and not have an issue on that side. Now, tonight's performer hardly needs an introduction, but he's going to get one. Beginning his touring career at the age of 11 as a solo soprano with the Vienna Boys Choir, moving on to further education with his violin at the Mozarteum in Salzburg, Austria, on to becoming a international concert performer and becoming a concertmaster of multiple symphonies, as well as the Santa Fe Opera. Stephen Moeckel encompasses the true embodiment of a musician. I am honored, pleased, and very privileged to present this evening's performer, Stephen Moeckel. Let's play some music.
Awesome. Happy to.
Yeah?
Great to be here. Thank you, Adam. This is awesome. This is my first solo performance in a year. Phenomenal. It's great to see you all. And I look forward to playing tonight
Yeah,
and chatting.
Yeah, no, we're going to have a lot of chats, and before we get going, I want to nip something in the bud right off the bat. So I'm assuming that there's a lot of the audience out there that maybe hasn't been watching the Wayback Sessions, and they're here for the first time, and they're going, "Hey, our concertmaster is here. The concertmaster is here. A violinist of your stature is here, and boy, it looks like you're kind of in a strange environment. Can you tell us a bit about where you're standing and why are you standing there?"
Oh my gosh, this was a year for us all, right? And so this studio, thank you, Adam, is where we just recorded my first solo album. In fact, I'm standing on the X where we recorded it. It ended up being a project that happened because of creating bubbles and creating an environment where we could perform and where we could express ourselves. And I came over here one day in the past summer and played a little excerpt that we were recording. And I said, the violin sounds pretty darn good in this room. What if we do a recording? And so we did. And we actually just finished it. So today I'm going to be playing, and this is the corner where I stood. We actually walked around the room and played through almost the entire album to figure out where this violin sounded the best, and we recorded and listened.
And to tell everybody, you could have recorded anywhere in the studio, and you picked this corner on top of the wood floor, and the violin.
Well, I'm surrounded by a couple of great artists.
Just a couple.
Metallica. So I'm in good company, and I'm channeling their vibes.
Well, you know what? To get this music portion of the performance started. Stephen has introduced me over this past year to Isai. Isai, Stephen?
Yeah, Isai.
Isai. And I wasn't aware of him. I'm sure that a lot of you might be, laughing about that. But it was new to me, and I kind of fell in love. I really enjoyed it a whole lot. And from what I understand and learned, he's the father of the modern violin in the United States. I'm going to spoil things right now. I think Stephen is going. I know Stephen is going to play some Isai right now. But can you tell us a bit more about Isai and what you're going to play?
Yeah, sure. This was really fun because over the summer, Adam and I needed to record some videos for a couple of different projects, and I recorded one of the movements from the Isai sonatas, and he just really liked it. So I knew that I was going to have to record some Isai. And if we were going to do an album together. So I chose this one, the Ballad, the third sonata, which was written for George Enesco. And it's his most famous sonata. It certainly is really super expressive and really fun and incredibly difficult. So I'm going to get going if you don't mind, because I want to get some playing in before we talk more.
Yeah.
So here's the Isai Ballad. anyway, that's most of it. Sorry, got lost there for a second. Thank you.
Wow. I don't think people, having that experience so up close and personal, and I hope that it's coming through on the screen like that. For me, it's, hearing Steven so up close and personal is like having one of my guitar heroes shredding my face off in front of me. So yeah, I'm just gonna pretend that you played that for me, even though I know he played it for all of you. What is really going on there? So
yeah, listen, I mean, this is such an awesome opportunity, and to get to play it and to be around people that care about music. And like I said, I'm going to be coming in and out all evening because I just want to kind of, what's so important to me is just to kind of relay what's going on, and then, hopefully tease you enough to,
buy the record.
Yeah,
because we're working on that. No, we will. So I'm going to interrupt for just a moment. And I have a quick announcement. I think this is going to make sense to everybody here in a moment. I hope that the audience at home right now is sitting with a glass of wine or a martini or whatever your pleasure is. The show is gaining traction when you are contacted by a fan and that fan says, hey, I understand that Steven is coming in to perform. I believe that we have some wine that would be a great pairing for his performance. And then they send you the wine. And not only do they send you the wine, but they send you a half a case, 6 bottles. So I'm just assuming they thought we were going to get drunk on the show tonight. I don't know. But anyway, I took the opportunity to decant it earlier and pour a glass, which is sitting next to you. It is a 2018 Elise winery from Napa, and it's the C'est Bon. Is that how am I saying that right, Steven?
Yes, you are. Wow.
I am. What does that mean? C'est bon.
This is great.
This is great.
Yeah.
Yes. So you know what? Cheers,
cheers,
Ben and Julie. Cheers, Steven.
Yeah. Cheers,
and
cheers,
let's
Steven.
let's. Oh yeah, that's what I like. This is good.
Oh,
yeah, I like that a whole lot.
Beautiful.
Yes. Thank you, guys, very much. So I'm going to set this here. Yeah.
I'm gonna moderately drink tonight because it's like I still got a lot of notes.
We're not looking to get drunk until we get done with the plane, and then we can let it get. Yeah. Well, anyway. So now that I have plied you with wine, Steven. Yes. Yes. Okay. And there's plenty moving through you right now.
Well, plenty. Yeah. There's enough.
So the new album. I'm interested in that. What is it called? What was your inspiration for it?
Well, it started with an idea of creating a work, by myself. So really solo violin due to the pandemic. We weren't allowed to perform. We weren't allowed to play together. We weren't allowed to be in the same space together. And, so I just started playing around with that idea and recording here and doing some stuff. And then it's sort of like it went through the summer, and we kind of let it settle, and then.
But we talked a lot about it.
We talked a lot about it. So then I went up to Oregon for a couple weeks, and I hiked around the fog and the coast, and it's a place I love so much. And I got back, and I was like, man, this is just so frustrating, and I want to play. I don't know what to do. And in fact, Adam's wife, Kat, told me, he's like, well, why don't you call, I wanted to put something contemporary on the album. And I said, why don't you call the composer that wrote a violin concerto, one of my colleagues from the Symphony? And I said, well, that's a great idea. So I called him, and 5 days later, he wrote me this piece, because everybody was in this kind of almost void of like, how are we going to express ourselves? And so he wrote me this piece called Unreal Dwelling. And then I thought, and I started playing it, and I was just wowed by it. So for me, that's like, that was just incredible. And Glenn, I hope you're listening. This is, officially, I'm going to play some for you for sure. But I want to.
I did get a note in Studio B that Glenn and his wife are saying hello.
Oh, awesome!
Hi, Glenn.
So awesome.
Many cheers from our fans online. Everyone's having a toast.
Awesome.
Well, cheers.
Tony is having wine and a fire. This is perfect. perfect.
Beautiful,
Oh,
beautiful. Well, Stephen, you jumped into some of my questions. Like I had all these notes prepared, and I was trying to be really, good tonight. But you got to it, and you answered them. Basically an inspiration and reaching out to a composer, and what made you want to do that, which is awesome. And I've heard this piece, and it is right up my alley. Stephen knows what I like, and I think that when he first played it for me, he knew that I was kind of going to go ballistic over it, and to have the opportunity to record it with him and hear it so many times. I'm really excited for you guys to share in all of this. One other thing regarding the record right now. When is it going to be released? What's it called? Okay. And how is it being released, Stephen?
Okay, so I decided to use, and I wrote about this too. You'll be able to find all this information on the website and on the record. There was a famous, the front page, Johann Sebastian Bach wrote 6 solo sonatas, and on the front page he wrote this sort of enigmatic title Say Solo, which it was kind of mistranslated for a while, but it actually means it's a very personal statement on his behalf, meaning you are alone. And he came back after a tour where his wife was dead and buried, and he didn't have a chance to say goodbye. And I thought, man, this is the stories we're hearing right now. And so I wanted to title the album Say Solo, You Are Alone. I ended up adding a little bit of a subtitle to it because I really wanted it to be I didn't want it to be a super depressing album. I wanted it to be kind of just reflect kind of, there's more than just kind of angst. And I mean, when Glenn showed me his piece, it's based on poetry by Basho. He originally wanted to title it Mists of the Unreal Dwelling because he was just kind of also, he's from the Pacific Northwest. And I was like, he knew exactly where I was walking and what I was doing. But the mists lifted really quickly because it became a lot about the expression and the kind of some anger about the pandemic and about what was happening. And so it just became this incredibly beautiful, thoughtful, virtuosic, difficult piece that just kind of blew our minds. And I remember seeing with Adam, and when we finished recording, we listened to the edited version of Unreal Dwelling. I was like, we got to start the album like this. And so we decided we're starting it there because I originally thought we'll start with the Bach, but I'm like, no.
There was no question once we got going with it that this was what needed to be showcased right up front and center. It's an amazing piece. And Glenn, I don't know you, but I'd like to. It's right up my alley. And I'm all blown away still that this is being written today in 2020, a few months back. What is it? 3-4 months ago, this didn't exist. And that's one of the things I love about music. It didn't exist, and now it does, and it'll be played, and the notes will wander on through the air, and they will go away. And it's, one of those.
I'm really proud to be a part of this. And this is a major kind of pin, holding pin.
How is it? When is it coming out? And how is it being released? Okay, Stephen, this is exciting stuff.
So on top of it, I decided.
What did you decide?
I decided that I wanted it to be on vinyl.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to be on vinyl because I wanted to, I wanted to create a different listening experience. What I was noticing was, people were sitting down and listening. There was no live entertainment. There was no activities to participate in. And so people started really just actually taking some time again, and because it was kind of forced on them. And I thought, there's something about putting on a record and just sitting and listening, because you're putting your whole, it's almost like going to a concert. I thought that's the closest thing to kind of bringing a live performance into a living room that I could do. And I there will be digital options available, of course. But the idea and the concept, the timing of it, the artwork, the writing about it, it's meant to sit, listen, look at pictures, read what we all spent time doing and writing. So that's the concept. So it's going to take a while.
When's it coming out?
Yeah, I know.
When's it coming out,
we submitted it on Monday. So they're working on it. Boy, they jumped on that project so fast. It was fantastic. So I'm hoping in what, 2 months? 3 months? I don't know. I don't even know.
We will hopefully we will get back together.
And we'll do a shout out for sure. We'll talk about
Steven
it
in the room.
Oh
We'll worry about that later. You know what? I think we've done enough teasing, and I want to hear this.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
I'm still getting used to this.
I told you guys. I told you this was coming. Steven, how did it feel? How you doing?
That was awesome. That was the world premiere, guys.
That
so
was the world
there you
premiere.
go.
Are we going into? Are we going into record sales? Are we going to start selling record
Selling right
players?
now. I mean, come on, that's the piece. Is like I'm out of breath. That's like that does it for me.
It looks like. I mean, that's the thing. You know, to see and enjoy a live performance up close and personal like this, and hopefully that's translating through, which is what we're really trying to do. It is like rip your face off hot. And, you know, I don't know who's going to attach to this, but the world that I come from, rock and roll for the most part. Stephen is a rock star. Like, I don't think that has to do with the genre of music you come to. I think you can call anybody a rock star, and everybody knows how that translates and what that really means.
And everyone is clapping online.
Oh, I love it.
Of course, everybody is.
Wow.
Thank you.
Well, I mean,
claps. Had to check in live. Breathtaking. That was some serious fiddle.
Awesome, guys. Thank you.
I will help the audience in cheering Stephen right now, and bravo. Like, you know, that gets my heart racing, and to be back here and have that affect, impact, and deal with that emotion.
Yeah, I wish Glenn were here to share it with us, because it'd be so cool to bring him up on stage. I feel like he'd be here.
Do you think maybe when the album comes out?
Yeah, we could do a recital.
Safe? I mean,
like
we're doing everything pretty darn safe, and
yeah,
maybe we could get him over here. We could even do an off-board type of interview or something.
Yeah,
let's do with him to pipe it in into the broadcast or whatever.
But it's always fun. You know, it's fun. There's something about premiering a work, if the composer's present, that is spectacular, because I mean, people do, especially when it's genuine and heartfelt in a composition. People get it. It doesn't matter what kind of music you're listening to, whether you like country or whether you like heavy metal. If the artists are sincere about their message, everybody will have an affinity for it, and it's really cool. It's great for me to be here and talk about this, because it's helping me get to know different kinds of music too.
You just said heavy metal.
Well,
I mean, Metallica is behind you,
come on,
keeping guard and watching over.
Yeah.
So, you know, one thing that I want to know about this is with a composition like this, is it classical? Do we call it classical? Do we define it? Does it even need to be defined? Like, in today's day and age, what did we just witness?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I'd call it classical in terms of, like, it was written for a solo violin in the traditional manner that music is written, right?
Yeah,
so I mean,
yeah.
But I would, you know, I would say now it's just all changing, because, you know, even composers. I mean, if you think about Mozart and Beethoven, who was inspired by Mozart, or Brahms, who was inspired by Beethoven. I mean, people picked up what was around them all the time. I mean, these great composers did not live in like an isolation bubble. They were around folk music. They were around, all sorts of types of different sounds, and it came into their music. I mean, so much of, if you listen to Brahms, you hear the Alp horns calling to one another, for example. So nowadays, when music is written today in 2020 or 2021, we are also classical. I'm going to use air quotes. I try to stay away from it. Like, classical music is also influenced by these elements that have come into being alongside of the traditional classical music, or even the traditional pop or rock and roll. I mean, all of the genres play a role in what composers are exposed
but
to.
not even the arts, the times, and the history, and the impact of culture and government and war.
Absolutely.
and everything.
And different peoples. You have access. We have access now to folk music that, you know, someone, you know, 30 years ago would never have heard, even, because we're seeing people migrating. We're seeing a lot of different, you know, and so cultures are being shared, and it's kind of like food, you know. Is the hamburger really American? So, you know, I mean, you have to look at that, and that's what composers are living on. And frankly, there's also what's kind of so cool right now is people are, you know, they're finding like different cities have different sounds, or because they're also just like these feeding grounds for the arts and for expression and for imagination. And so, you know, whether you're from Portland or from Chicago, like it's starting to identify different music. Like, you know, if I say New Orleans or Nashville, people immediately have an idea of what they're expecting to hear. And that's true of classical music too, whether it's Vienna or Paris or Berlin back in the day, but now it's just totally changing. So
Stephen, so would I understand after hearing that, which made a ton of sense, could I distill that into what I just heard was music?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the definition.
Well, someone said it's like there's only good music and bad music. It's not like across the genre there is bad music and there's bad classical music and there's bad, and that we don't have to talk about it. We're here to talk about great music and great performances, and that's.
I mean, we all in Western music we all have the same 12 notes technically that we're using. And
in fact, and some composers are even bending that a little bit.
Well, yeah, you get into the microtonal stuff,
so
and there's a bunch of rock and roll that is dropping into that microtonal, and going back, bringing in the Eastern world into it, which is terribly fascinating and completely boggles my mind, and some of it I really attach to. So I want to change topics just a little bit here. Okay, you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay, so I've always been fascinated by your role as a concertmaster.
Oh.
And, I don't want to discount our audience's knowledge out there, because I'm sure that a lot of our viewers this evening probably know all this. But can you tell us a bit about your role as a concertmaster, what it takes, what you're really doing out there? And even if some of you out there do know these answers, you may not hear it directly from him unless you've asked the question of a specific concertmaster. And I'm always really interested in this component. Take it.
Wow. Okay. Well, the first common misconception, I guess, coming from outside the classical music world is that, we show up to work in our tails or in our tuxedos and we play this music that some people are kind of uncomfortable there because they're not sure if they're dressed appropriately to come and listen to it. And then we go home. So the first thing is, it's like, I spend a lot of time throughout my life still today practicing and prepping and getting things ready. It's a tremendous amount of time that I spend.
Well, how much did you spend time practicing for this?
Oh my gosh, yeah, tons of time. Well, a solo album has its own difficulties because you don't even have someone to play off of, so you're constantly, it's just your own thing. But aside from that, if you go out as concertmaster, concertmaster is basically the first chair violin, and I always use that term because. It's something that a lot of people can relate to from their school. It was always kind of the thing, who got to get to play first chair. But so and it's an audition process. It's not something that just gets picked out of the group of players. It's an audition process, and your job basically it used to be back in the day when orchestras were formed. It used to be really the conductor almost. So back in the day there weren't conductors, and so the concertmaster would kind of lead the rehearsals, and that was true for a very long time. And so your job was really to act as a go-between between the conductor and the orchestra, and often like kind of an intermediary. And your roles can vary depending on the situation that's needed. It can be, for sure, it's leading the section. For sure, it's kind of touching base with deciding what kind of strokes are used, whether I'm playing at the tip or at the frog. I mean, these things when you look at an orchestra. Sorry, I'm just gonna, you look at an orchestra and you see them either playing here or playing here. Those decisions are made because you want it to be uniform across the section, and you have to imagine that. An orchestra like, let's say, Phoenix Symphony has a totally diverse section of people that have been there from anywhere from 40 years to 2 years. So anyway,
when we talk about, and this is off, when we're hanging out and doing stuff, when you're talking about the Bowings, is that what you're talking about? Getting it uniform and playing on the frog or what? So
So I use that term a lot, and that's kind of, where that's part of my job to kind of figure out what we're doing there. It's a very technical part of the job. And then, there's a lot of repertoire that calls for a lot of solo playing. So you're constantly on the hook for, being a soloist, and then you stand up, and then, I have concertos each year where I just have to stand up and play, and which is awesome. I love that part of my job. And I love the challenge of constantly having to be 100% engaged. So it's been a really cool journey. I've been in Phoenix now. 2008 I joined, so it's the longest I've lived in one place, and I'm thrilled. I'm looking forward to coming back. We've been dark for this year because of this pandemic, and so looking forward to seeing what's going to be new next year.
Yeah, I think we're all pretty darn excited. So tell me about what was your first concertmaster position, where and how did you get that? How'd that happen?
Well, so I was really young when I went to school. I went to school in Salzburg, and I played a lot. My dad was a conductor, so I got to play concertmaster a lot with my father. Gave me a lot of opportunities as a teenager and as a kid, which was really awesome. So I kind of knew the role, but I auditioned. I remember vividly. I came home. It was February. We were on school break, and I was complaining about Salzburg. So I was like, I can't go back. I'm just so tired of this all, and throwing a little tantrum.
How old
And
were
my
you again?
dad goes, well, then why don't you audition for a job?
Uh-huh.
And there was one, and
At the age of
19. I was
Okay.
19 years old, and I auditioned for the associate concertmaster position of the Philharmonic, which ironically was Karajan's first orchestra, but that's a different story. But so, and I won that job. So you go and you audition behind a screen. So it's a very unique. It's one of the last kind of remaining professions where they try to create as much of a fairness aspect as possible. So you walk out on carpet so that you can't even tell as a committee whether it's high heels or what kind of shoe the person's wearing. So you really cannot tell anything about the candidate for first, second, sometimes even 3 rounds, and then we just choose blindly based on the playing. And so that makes it very difficult, though, because everything you've learned and everything you've studied kind of boils down to those few minutes of playing in order to get a job. And you can imagine, I mean, there's not that many orchestras, but there's a ton of players. And so, I mean, even a section position often attracts 200, 300 players that day, and you get to play 5 minutes, and that was it. Sometimes that was all you got. So it's a crazy profession. And so I won that job. And during that time, I decided I wanted to kind of study more. And I asked for a year's leave of absence. And that's when I came to the States.
Okay.
About 2000.
And at some point you got to Tucson, which
Yeah.
was a huge deal.
Yeah.
And then now you're with the Phoenix Symphony
Yep.
and the Santa Fe Opera.
Santa Fe Opera.
Right? Yes. So my next question to that is, how does being concertmaster of a symphony differ from being concertmaster of an opera? Or is it?
Oh, well, it is and it isn't. I mean, obviously some of the things I was talking about, the technical aspects of being a concertmaster are the same. You're there to lead, you've got to pay attention. However, your attention, first of all, the operas are much longer than a symphony concert. So it's a different type of playing. The violin is used a lot. There's a reason, when you're whining about something, someone comes up to you and does this, you're like, oh, I'm playing a little violin for you, because it's like every time there was something sad. Yeah, exactly. Every time there's so violin, so a concertmaster in an opera, you're playing a lot of solos. So you have to be really on the shows. Now you have to imagine with opera, and similar to ballet, where although operas, I come from a vocal background, so opera is just incredible for me because I love listening to singers, to great singers. Let me make sure I say that. But you never know what's going to happen when you've got a stage, when you've got staging involved, lighting involved, props involved. Things happen, so you can't just kind of come in and just play what you know or what you rehearsed. You're going to come in, and it might be totally different. That's true of ballet as well. I mean, the conductor, if the dancer doesnn't show up, the downbeat's not going to happen. So, you that's kind of, it's almost more fun, I think, to be in a pit in that regard, because you just never know what's going to
But
what's going to
it's
happen.
also the difference between 2 hours and like 18
4 or
hours in the
5,
4 or
6,
5.
yeah.
Sorry, I was exaggerating
Yeah.
everybody, but yeah, 4 or 5 hours
Yeah.
in the pit at the opera,
Yeah, you
just slaying it.
Yeah, I mean, you play a Wagner opera. I mean, what, Parsifal is like 6 hours, I think, 7. I don't know.
And
I
so
can't
now
even
that's
imagine.
bringing you in tune with the vocalists, and
Yeah.
is it a different listening
Oh,
operation
entirely.
for you?
I mean, I talk about how even in my audition year, the summer of 2000. What year is it?
I don't
21,
know.
I don't know. 2019. It seems so long ago. I mean, there's this solo with the clarinet, the soprano, the tenor on stage, and me, and we're trying to all find this note together. The clarinetist can't hear the soprano. I'm like, I can hear. I was like, why don't you play a little bit louder, and I'll float on top, because I've got the highest one, so I'll float on top of that, and she'll be able to hear me, so we'll all be right there, and and then and that's the kind of conversation that goes on in an opera pit, like on the sidelines, and just to kind of make that moment as spectacular as you can, because a lot of times too, you have to, a concertmaster in an opera orchestra is actually like you're really busy because once the singers join, right, the conductor is 100% trying to pay attention to getting them to work, and that's and to be on time. So there's a lot of stuff that has to happen in the orchestra amongst ourselves and a lot of communication. So it's a little bit more engaged than a symphony concert. But I like it because I get to wear a black shirt. I don't have to wear tails. I don't have to worry about if my pants are ironed, because let me tell you, I have gotten letters. So I'm very aware of it.
Really?
No, I'm not kidding.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
Sorry.
They didn't like when I
Sorry.
stood up and the back of my pants were wrinkled.
We're
too
creased.
soon. So,
Oh, man.
yeah.
So you know what? You and I have a thing. We can literally do this all night and all night and all night. I'm going to pull something on you right now that Stephen and I really didn't talk about, and I'm going to see if it goes over, and he might run over here and slap me around. But I think that if we could get 1,000 views on this video, ultimately, I could probably work on getting Stephen back in here. So would love anyone passing that around, and that would just give some fuel to the fire of the show, to where I could, call Stephen and say, look, we did this. Let's see if we can do this again. The second thing is that, going back to this, these fans of the show, Ben and Julie and the Elise Winery, we do have a lot of bottles, and I don't think we're going to get that drunk tonight. Maybe a little. Maybe we're on our way. I don't know. And Stephen doesn't know this, but if there's any donations going on out there tonight, and I don't know if there are, but I would like to say that the top donor of tonight, we can get Stephen to sign a bottle of the Elise Winery's wine, maybe the Chardonnay. There's a few to choose from, but we'll work on that and get him to sign it. And it has to be in the Phoenix area, though, because we can't ship wine around the country. I think it's illegal to ship it across state lines. And, I'll come deliver it or whatever, especially if it's in the Phoenix area. But anyway.
I'd be happy to. Are you kidding?
Okay. Yeah. Well, you know what? There you hear it. We will take a bottle of the wine. We will have it signed and get it delivered to you, especially if you're in the Phoenix area. So moving into the next song, the next performance, the next piece. What do you have for us, Stephen? What do you have to play?
Well, I wanted to play a little bit of Bach. I think after that, when you're listening to the record, the first thing you'll hear after that style cup is the really slow, beautiful first movement of the Adagio, the G minor solo sonata. And I'm not going to play that for you today, but I would like to play a slow movement, because I feel like after that, listening to Unreal Dwelling too, you just need a moment to kind of reflect. And I think music has to create I was writing about this when I did my essay. When I sort of decided on the Izai, and then kind of the Bach, and then I was like, wait, this is turning into a recital album. And I started really kind of figuring out what I wanted the listener to go through with me, so that it's not all up here, like stressed out, but yet you actually have some flows and some time to kind of sit, to clear your throat, to I don't know. And so there's timing in between the tracks. And so I'd like to play some Bach for you, if you don't mind.
And real quick, this is going to, on the album, it starts with the Adagio.
Yes.
It goes into the fugue.
Yes.
We're not going to hear that this evening. We're going to hear the second half.
Yeah.
So the Siciliana.
Yeah, I'm just going to play the Siciliana
Presto.
right now. Yes.
Okay. We'll see about that. But let's start there. No.
And this piece is really beautiful. And part of the reason I wanted to record this is because this is one of the pieces that Adam and I recorded on video over the summer as part of the video projects of getting content online and getting part of performances. So that's why this piece made it in. I love this movement. I hope you do too.
Yeah, that one just makes me want to cry every time you play it, Stephen.
That's an amazing piece of music. I always imagine, I spoke about that earlier, excuse me, that, Bach returned home after being on tour and his wife had passed and he wasn't, there was no way to contact him. So he was devastated and had no chance to say goodbye. And I imagine that movement as kind of a duet with his late wife, almost just kind of it sounds so conversational. It's just kind of telling, reminding, just kind of reminiscing and, about all the beautiful things that life encompassed. So it has a very special place in my heart. I'm glad it's on the album.
Yeah, no. And 4 pieces to that. Oh, I'm going to be an amateur. What the movement, the caprice, what is the whole?
Sorry, the P.
All of it, the adagio,
the whole sonata. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah, sorry. I was
See, now we're just looking at my fascination with the music and my lack of knowledge.
But it's about the music. At the end of the day, who cares? It's about
who cares
feeling
what it's
things.
Called and what it's about what the definition
things.
of it is and all of that. And no, I think that's a lot of what. I began this with that issue for me of just being, fascinated and curious about all things music. And I don't really care what it is. And I would rather have more knowledge about it to make an educated decision, an informed decision about why I like it or why I don't like it even more. And so, Stephen, thanks for...
Well, even having that conversation is what art is.
Yeah.
It is really discovering that, when I have a conversation with anyone about something that I played or a piece on stage, or I give plenty of space for people to say I don't like it. I have most of my friends are not in classical music. Now they've been through me now. So I joke that some of them have been actually to more concerts than I have because, I'm usually playing, excuse me. But, I tell them it's like, we can talk about not liking for sure, because that's it. That the whole conversation of it becomes spirit. It becomes, just it's what art should do. It's not everybody likes the same thing. And so creating space where we can talk about it and discover meanings is awesome.
And that's the part I always love about it, the music, art, or anything is, not liking it and following that up with why.
Why?
Let's really dig into that, because that's as important, if not more important sometimes than liking something or digging into why you like it.
Oh, I've gotten such incredible feedback about pieces that have changed the way I've played things by people who start out by saying, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but, and I'm like, I love those conversations because I'm like, well, you do because you're my audience. I want you to listen. So I want to hear what you heard. And I don't, if you're too afraid to tell me, then I don't learn. And, those of you who are performers and artists out there, our constant goal is trying to achieve this horrific ideal of perfectionism that is not necessary, but seems to be like the number one thing that, at least I'm worried about all the time, and I'm nowhere near it. So it's insane. So it's a great work. And that's part of the reason why I'm standing in this studio and I'm working with these incredible people on a classical violin album. It's going to be phenomenal.
It's amazing. And it sounds great. I want to break in real quick. Okay. We had, there were some comments came in because the intern, the Wayback Sessions just recently got an intern, and I sent that bottle of the C'est Bon. Am I saying that right, Stephen?
Yeah.
C'est Bon.
Good enough.
It's good enough. I sent that bottle back to Studio B where Kat and Brian are dealing with production. The intern returned a note that said somebody was asking about how to make the donation. So again, I wanted to just say it's in the descriptions in the link of the video. You might have to hit the show me more drop down arrow on the video. I don't know.
They're asking to put it in the chat, so I don't have access to that right now. If somebody is super awesome and can throw that into the chat box, that would be great as well. Help people out.
Studio B Cat, is it possible to, oh, you don't have it to, yeah, no, if somebody out in the audience, now here's what I do know is a few shows ago that happened, and I believe maybe Jared took care of it, or Jason Campos is out there, copy and pasted it into the messages. The only problem with that is that it doesn't come through as a link on the chats, but you might be able to get it in copy and paste. Anyway, moving on from that, and we get to hear the presto? Do we or not? I mean, I will push. I will, like throw things at you.
All right. Okay.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. All right, everybody. Yes. We are going to get this. Yes.
Oh, that was a false start there. Hang on a second.
No, we're tuning.
Sorry about that. All right. Something like that.
Something like that. Oh.
Yeah, that's a notoriously fiendish work, and it's actually really hard to kind of come in and out of playing, and so it's like that's why I was hesitant about it. But
so I know
thanks for bearing with me there.
I want to let everybody out there know that we are pushing Steven tonight. We are pushing him because we're spending so much time speaking to tell stories, which I just think is so important to this whole show and message.
Well, yeah,
and the
it's
fun of it. That you have a tendency to get cold between things, and I don't know if that's what happened. I'm just grateful that you just like ripped my face off with that. And
well, it's so cool. I mean, Bach wrote that, and by the way, so many artists that we've talked about and listened to have kind of emulated that sound and that kind of incredible composition style of Bach throughout the ages, and so it's definitely worthwhile. And that's one of his craziest movements, and probably most virtuosic in terms of.
Well, we go back to the stuff that I talked about, and for the rock and roll audience of the Wayback Sessions, and different to what your audience is right now, it's akin to having Steve Vai or Eric Clapton or Stevie Ray Vaughan or Eddie Van Halen come in and just kind of rip your face off right in front of you. It is no different. It is rock star. I know I brought that up earlier, but I just can't help. Every time I see you, you're such a performer, and whenever I see you on stage at the Symphony and you get up there, it is like you just light the place up, and it's so much fun. Whether you're it's a regular Symphony performance or you have a solo performance, which I've had the pleasure of as well, and it's it gets my heart racing and my heart beating, and I hope everybody else is having that same reaction out there, because that's what we're trying to do, and I think it's coming across.
But thank you. That's a huge compliment, because yes, I get to do this incredible. I get to be a part of making great music, but I want to be and I want to entertain people and really bring. I want to bring what I'm feeling. I mean, I think performers have a huge part in bringing the pieces over. These composers did not write for a computer or just to have this kind of these notes that they put on. They wrote it knowing full well that depending on what violinist, what orchestra, what conductor, what pianist is going to play it, it's going to take on a life of its own. So it's amazing. So I'm glad you feel that, and because again, I want you to feel.
Look, yeah, no, it is all about that, and I don't think I'm the only one. I think there's plenty of people out there in TV land or whatever we're doing that are feeling the same way. So we played that. Okay, I'm just kind of going through my notes. I tried to organize and educate myself to make sure I sounded smart, which we might be failing. We don't know.
So in the audience, we have some minds blown. That's amazing. Everybody's clapping, by the way. I know you can't hear it, but everyone is clapping.
I will share it for them.
Often, yes. People are getting through the donations. There is some trouble, but they're figuring it out, and it sounds like they are getting through and doing those pluses. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Guys.
We've got plenty of things to work through, and this is a new show in its infancy in construct and format and delivery artists and everything. So
Yeah, just wait until Adam and I are co-hosting a country band.
Oh yeah, and
that's gonna be. I mean, we're gonna be the two old guys in the opera. That's my goal.
That's gonna happen.
That's what I really want. Like,
what
are you
know
it's
about? Gonna happen.
So,
and some of us might know more than the others because when we get to that, yeah. So let's see here.
I know that you talked to me about one thing that you wanted to bring up was things that kind of impacted me in my life and kind of decisions that kind of changed the way the trajectory of my life. I mean, you kind of brought that up earlier, and
it's not to interrupt you, but it starts with talent. It starts with drive. And at some point, there's a break or an opportunity out there that comes into play. And tell me about your, can you remember what was your first opportunity that broke it open? And were there multiple opportunities?
Well, it's different in my kind of genre. It's kind of like you don't necessarily get discovered. And I was really, I'm really grateful because my parents are both musicians, and so they were able. I had a nurturing ground for doing music that was very understood and very, very easily accessible. And so I grew up with music, and I started violin when I was 4, and then I became a singer. And I think the what changed the trajectory of my life was my parents deciding that I should audition for the Vienna Boys Choir. And we were living in Illinois at the time in Macomb, and went up to Chicago and heard a concert. And I will never forget walking up to that stage and just saying, like, singing with them, watching, and the conductor, I became a Vienna choir boy. So I would say that was kind of, that totally changed what we did as a family too, because we moved back to Europe. I was 9, 10 years old, and I lived in Vienna then for 2 years. I mean, it was just crazy. And so my entire idea of education just changed, and I became, and I didn't come back to the States then again, like I said, until about 2000. So I would say that was really one of the big breaks in terms of like changing kind of what I'm doing, what I did as an artist, and it certainly impacted the way I play. So I would say that's a big.
Vienna was the big number
big
one
moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting a signal from Studio B before we go on because we got something really cool to go into. What's up, Kathleen?
Hey, so we're gonna. I also wanted to point out that the subscribers are really important to us as well as the donations. But are you ready for?
Oh, so if you're digging that, no, not quite yet.
Okay.
So you bring up the Vienna Boys Choir, and we didn't exactly set this up before or anything, but you bring up the Vienna Boys Choir, and you spoke about that first initial experience coming out of Macomb and that first introduction, an audition rather. This story is so amazing, and I have heard it. And when I initially heard about it, I started really crawling into it more and more with Stephen, just out of pure curiosity. And being a videographer, it sounded like it was a great story and documentary to tell. So over a long course of time, Stephen and I sat down and we walked through a bunch of things, put together the story, really took a look at it. And we filmed a full documentary about his entire experience at Vienna Boys Choir, and then on to his time singing opera on stage in Berlin, which it really gets nutty when you start looking at there's a 10, 11, 12-year-old boy that's doing 87 tour dates over 90 days across Europe. It is insane. Anyway, we made this documentary. It's almost done. We've been in talks with PBS. It has been going up the ranks there ever so slowly. And hopefully, yeah, right, Stephen? We've been going through this. Hopefully at some point it will see the light of day. I don't really have expectations as far as what will eventually happen, where it will be aired. But I did put together a quick little excerpt from the documentary that, Kat, do we have that queued up in Studio B? Do you want to throw that in there just to tease you guys?
Some pictures of, oh yeah, there's my mom with the Vienna Boys Choir sweatshirt on, my sister. We were a very musical family and did a lot. We were living in Macomb at the time, and my parents arranged for me to audition for them. So we went up to Chicago to a concert, and I'll never forget going up on stage after the performance, and the conductor of the choir came down, sat down at the piano. The rest of the choir was up kind of in the loft, and we did the Hallelujah by Mozart, which is the final movement of his cantate Exultate Jubilate. And I remember singing that for him, and all the boys applauding, and the conductor looked at me and said, "Come to Vienna." And that was the life-changing event right there that day, because it changed for my entire family. It changed the entire trajectory of what we did as a family. Look at this, the lifestyle of the Vienna Boys Choir. This was their promotional propaganda, so to speak. Gosh, the study halls just look like, I know these pictures are older than when I was there, but they looked exactly like that. It hasn't changed much. So you have to imagine this 10-year-old boy lands in Vienna, and I'm seeing all this for the first time in my life.
So there's a little excerpt to hopefully tease you, and hopefully I left you hanging for going, so where does the story go next? Because there's a lot of story that goes next and before, actually. It's really interesting. And we'll see what happens,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's interesting to hear those recordings.
Right. That's the thing, is all of the audio in there, the music you hear is audio recordings of Stephen singing the solo work with the Vienna Boys Choir that I think your parents recorded.
Yeah, I think this was slightly after I left the choir, where my parents organized these concerts.
But you were singing there.
I was singing.
That's all you.
Yeah, that's all me.
So we were, I was fortunate enough.
It's so weird. It was weird. Going through that documentary was super cathartic, and I was just, it was a lot. That was an interesting.
It was a lot. But tell me, how much fun did we have?
Oh my God!
And digging out those tapes. The cool thing is, Brian back in Studio B handling sound and audio, really helped to transpose. I don't know what the word is, but transfer. Transferred the busted cassette tapes over into digital so we could work with them. But really a great story. Again, it just kind of grabbed me and took me in, and was something that was like, hey, you need to tell this story. You need to capture it and lock it in for forever. So we have it, and we'll see what happens with it. So, we have a little more music.
Yes, we do.
We do.
Well,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna hand it over to you because I'll go crazy with this and I'm gonna start making jokes. Which I told him I wasn't gonna make the joke, and I'm not gonna make the actual joke. But there might have been a little, hiccup and joke with me in the background. But
well, it's fine. You can tell it.
No,
I mean, what
I'm
people
not
want to
gonna
hear.
tell it.
I was just like, eventually, I was like, we
they're
need
gonna
to
want to hear something that you're not gonna
gonna
play.
play.
Is what's gonna
So,
happen.
you can joke all you want as long as you.
You
take
know I
the
do.
I know, right?
So anyway, what do you have queued up for us next?
Well, so when I was deciding what to play, when I was deciding what to put on the album, I was kind of, again, solo violin, and I didn't want the pieces to necessarily compete with one another constantly, because that can happen when you're doing just a solo album. I mean, the albums that I'd done previously were with violin and piano, and that gives just by definition just a lot more diversity in terms of what you're listening to.
Yeah, this is your first solo
This
album.
is my first solo album, and so I wanted to put some stuff on there. So I knew I had the Isai and the Bach, and then Stahlkopf showed up, which is great, and I was like, okay, great, I've got. And then I was like, you know what, I need to play some Paganini caprices. So
Ooh.
Paganini, Paganini and I are not the best of friends. A lot of
not your
violinists,
jam?
not really. Like it's okay. We've reconciled.
Yes, you have.
But so it's a good thing. And I just decided these were two that I kind of was using to keep my fingers in play. I mean, because this last year was the first time in my life since I played violin that I had this much time with no concerts. And I kind of, I'm very task oriented. So for me, there are those people who naturally can motivate themselves all the time. I am not that person. I'm pretty good at it for a while, but I do love deadlines, and I love to have like a concert to really prep for. And I didn't have that. So I was trying to figure out how to practice and what to do during this time. So the album helped that. That was part of the reason I did the album. And Paganini was another one. It's like Paganini, they're just so technical, and they're really hard, and it was just a good thing for me to keep my fingers going. So I recorded two of them, 17 and 21. Tonight is the final piece in the program. I'll play the 21 for you. I have to check a few things first because.
Yeah, you check a few things.
Yeah, all right, okay.
While you're doing that, so
right.
we do have there's plenty more to chat about after this, and we'll kind of dial in between the eyes with a few different things. But first, we're going to get dialed between the eyes by Stephen performing Paganini 21.
Yes.
I got it right.
Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. Paganini, Stephen Moeckel, yes.
Sort of reconciled, I guess.
So now we have the wine out. Yeah.
Now it tastes even better. It needed to breathe a bit, or was that me?
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know.
No. Well, I mean, I did decant it for a
beautiful.
couple of hours
This is just
beforehand.
gorgeous.
I was told that that's what I should do. Now I do think it is a beautiful wine, and I'm enjoying it. But now you can go for it. Well, Stephen, well done. So now can we chat?
Yeah, let's talk.
We haven't been doing.
I'm done
that
with
yet,
this.
right?
I know.
Well, again, another round of applause.
Oh,
I know
thanks,
that
guys.
the audience is totally doing the same thing as me, and Studio B is going nuts. I know.
That was fun, boy.
So yeah, that was totally
First
fun.
recital in a year.
Yeah,
that's a different thing.
It's
That's
been a long
different.
time. It's been
Yeah.
a crazy, nutty year, and we've been doing our best to work through everything. I mean,
Yeah, no, I mean it's just been insane, and that's like I've been so appreciative of, these kind of cultural bubbles that we've created in our neighborhood. We're going to be doing some long concerts this weekend, and trying to kind of do what we do. It's a communication thing. It's like it's not just about it's not just about having opportunities to play or making money. Even it's really
It's
there's
about
a
keeping the community
drive,
alive,
and
right?
I was talking with some of Adam's musician friends too that are, I guess, not classical, since now we're using classical as a very vague term. But I'm like, it's the same feeling. It's that same sense of like, oh my God, we just want to play. We just want to, because rehearsals is when we actually feel like we're actually expressing ourselves 100%, like words and we're musicians, where we come from in here and we want to be around that and we feed off that. And this is just fantastic to do a recital like
It is, and there's I know that I've said this in other shows, and I hate to repeat myself, but I think it's really important. One of the premises of this show, other than having being able to share in the community and the live music with the audience, which is so important because we're all missing that sense of community, the parties, just being social with each other. But in my opinion, it's so dangerous for a musician and an artist to not be able to perform or get it out. At what point, being able to perform, do you quit writing songs? Do you quit performing? When does that become a depression?
Yes, because unused creativity is not benign.
No,
it is not. It turns into anger and frustration, and that's true of every person. You don't have to be a great artist or a performing artist or a concertmaster or but creativity is a huge part of who we are as human beings, and that going unused is very unhealthy.
Dangerous.
It's incredibly dangerous, and you can actually see that after they took arts and music out of schools. You can see there's a certain key development aspect that is definitely missing when that's not there.
Yeah.
It's not just about learning numbers and words and so.
Unfortunately, in today's world with the technology, we're able to do things like
Thank
this
God.
to keep it alive and keep going
Good Lord.
and wait for you to get back on stage. With,
but
Santa
meanwhile,
Fe
I'm
and
like,
Phoenix and
Yeah.
all those things that we're really excited about. So I want to do what I was considering the lightning round, and I just don't think it's going to be very lightning and quick. But I want to kind of
all right,
hit
I'll try to
you.
answer quickly.
Well, no, because it's more fun. Favorite concert you've ever played?
Oh my God, there's so many. I was, oh shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I think the first time I played Elgar Violin Concerto with my orchestra in Germany, I think that was for me like such a goal. Maybe Dream of Durantes with Indianapolis and Michael Francis. I don't know. There's a couple that just top it that I just can't. I know. I can't.
So that's almost like putting you on the spot.
I know.
I guess,
Well, it's
I
like,
guess that's
there's
what I'm
just
doing.
so many where you just walk off stage and you're like, my God, I can't believe I was a part of that. That's incredible. Yeah.
So, have you ever experienced what you'd consider a failure on stage?
Well, failure is in the, you know.
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
like definitions aside.
Well, I have
come
a
on,
couple.
we
I
already
have
threw 'em
a
away
couple
earlier.
of moments where I thought I was a huge failure. One was not a big audience at all. It was my sister's wedding. I got so emotionally involved. I ended up being a shaky mess during the whole piece. I was so embarrassed in front of everybody. That for me was a huge failure. I was so like, I wanted to be so older brother to my sister, but anyway, so that was one thing. And then, you know, I've had some mishaps, I guess. People like,
Yeah, tell me about a mishap.
So I was playing Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto, and so we get to the last movement, and I'm having this performance of a lifetime. I was super nervous for it. For some reason, I was there, and so I'm playing, and I end on my note before the last tutti of the orchestra, you know, and I do this, and my shoulder rest, so this part here plops off the violin and rolls to the edge of the stage. So the tutti is not particularly long. So I'm like, I can't play the end of the concerto. So some people play without shoulder rest, but for me, I mean, I look like I'm just starting. So I cannot, there's no way that I can finish the concerto without this. So I'm like, so the orchestra's going, it's like super exciting. And I'm like, okay, Stephen, just we're breathing, we're moving. So I walk to the front of the stage. I walk back with the scroll, and I'm like, okay, I'm perfectly calm. Look at what I can do. I didn't fall.
Look at what I can do.
I know. And so I put it on, and then the orchestra goes, yum, da-da-dum, bum, 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 and boom, and my E string rips.
Oh.
So I'm like, oh, so all for naught. I then, and the conductor's just like, he's in his own world. So I'm like, oh, shoot, the E string rips. So I grab the concertmaster's violin. I'm like, I switch violins with him. So in that particular passage, it's really interesting because the conductor didn't even notice that something happened. He was like in his music and the second one I had to leave out because I was switching violins. So it went and he turns and he's like conducting. He sees me fussing, and then I got back in. I was just remember the right key. So that was kind of a fun. I don't know. I wouldn't call it a fuck up because it's like it happens. But that was kind of the most. I mean, people just love that when that happens, and because of course the concertmaster. So this was my old orchestra that I was when I was 19 when I was concertmaster, and so I came back as a guest. It was when I was actually in Phoenix. It was 2008. I came back as a guest artist to play, and so he was a good friend of mine. So of course he was just loving. So anyway, that's that moment.
Look, that's exactly what I was looking for.
People still talk about it.
Yeah. Well,
They're like, do you remember those? And of course, the reviewer, you know, persnickety Germans, you know, he's like, well, it was like being in the Wild West. And it was like, oh, I guess Phoenix is wearing off on Steven, you know, the horse change and the like posts, whatever they were referencing. I was like, I don't know. Okay,
tying your horse, hitching your horse to a post.
You know how they used to like trade out horses and like they jump over. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever. That's I think a totally different thing. So you have performed all over the world, literally many continents all over the world. So do you feel that audiences in different countries listen to you differently?
Certainly.
Yeah.
There's different cultures of listening, for sure. I would say there's certain audiences, you know, if you go to Italy, if I'm looking at Europe, you know, there's different, just culturally, there's different ways of listening to music. We started, unfortunately, creating this classical music concert idea where no one's allowed to applaud between movements and we want total silence. And it became a little bit rigid. I mean, if you look back at Mozart's day when he was writing operas, if people weren't hollering during the performance, he thought it was a flop. So I'm kind of going, but I would say, you know, performing for a German audience is different things are expected. They don't like you to be as showy. They're a little bit more serious. Big surprise. So whereas if you head down south, you're to Italy or to Spain, you know, they want to show similar to, you know, I would say it just kind of depends on what they want. There's also a different taste in what type of music people really enjoy listening to. So that really varies. I've found I've loved to perform in America because I think people here vary. They feel like they want to learn. It's an incredibly open culture when you give people a chance. And I think classical music has really made is quite a huge impact there. Even though people say, oh, you know what, Europe and Central Europe is like the real stronghold for the classical music, and I'm like, yeah, I get it. There's a lot of support for it, financial support from a government, but there's not as much. There's a lot of enthusiasm when you can get people here enthused about classical music, and I like that about this culture. And then playing in China is also totally different because it's not an emotional response. It's a
Proper?
very so you're like, oh my god, they hated it. You're like, I had to play Butterfly Lovers, the big Chinese violin concerto in China, and I was like, oh my god, I'm an imposter. They hate me. I'm like, so but they were not the case at all. But it was just like, so the reactions can be totally different. So it is. You certainly have to have a lot of confidence and inner security.
Did I hear you
in order to do this
quiet
profession?
there?
Yeah, I know. Like
Confidence, Stephen. Yeah, no, you are amazing. I'm going to shift things just a touch. I've had the privilege to share music over time with Stephen, and he always is very nice and allows me to introduce a few things that maybe he doesn't know very well or not at all. In this past year, going back to Isai, he turned me on to that, and I really quite enjoyed it a whole lot. In turn, I turned him on to David Bowie and Jethro Tull. And I want to talk a little bit about that because the reason I picked those artists was their compositional approach and what they do. It seemed like a really good crossover point for me. Both of those artists bring in a lot of the orchestration, and the compositional component is very strong. I want to talk about David Bowie first real quick. What you thought, did you like it? And B, I know you had a little issue trying to work through the rock and roll voice.
Yeah, so that's great. And I'm really grateful. See, this is why I wanted to be a part of this show, because I'm broadening my horizon. I think it's better. The more things you like, the better your life is.
Yeah.
The more full your life. I mean, so if I need a little bit of help getting introduced to these albums, and I see someone who's passionate about this, and ironically, we were listening to records.
Yes.
So I'm like, well, I wonder how much influence, how much thought I really put into it, and whether or not I was just kind of moving along with these artists.
Stephen, it's vinyl.
It's vinyl. That's the future. So yeah, for me, what's so fascinating about David Bowie was, I'm coming from vocal scene and coming from someone who listens to a voice a lot. As first and foremost, I'm an opera concertmaster, for God's sake, right?
Yes.
Like, so, I was a little bit perturbed by some of the inflections, and I can kind of have to clear my throat with some people, and I know instantly when it's not comfortable in their vocal cords. So that kind of threw me for a while, and then I started listening to the whole sound and to the band, and I was like really thrilled with some of the metric changes and some of the ways and some of the writing and some of the cadences and some of the playing by some of these artists. This is kind of more introductory for me, and I was starting to listen to how they were like shaping the songs and how these meaning was coming over, and I was like, well, and then looking at some of their influences, and some of them list Bach, some of them list Mendelssohn. It's really interesting because and then you're like, well, now I hear that.
Yeah.
Because now I'm listening to this in a totally different mind. They also studied the classics for a minute,
Yeah.
and recognized compositional techniques. And what we're drawn to as listeners, a lot of people complain sometimes about not hearing a melody, and I'm like, I think we are by nature designed to gravitate towards patterns and towards structure, right? Everything's built, so perfectly in nature, and I think that when the more, if we start analyzing really like the greats in their songwriting and their performing, you're going to find a common thread of the way they created a listening experience for us.
Absolutely.
Right? Like throughout a song, maybe, but also throughout an album. And I think that is, and then you'll find the ones that are just popular for a minute and that don't do that.
Yeah,
But
and that's different.
and there's certain and we can debate styles. Sure, like some people don't like a country, or they don't like music from the 60s, or they don't like disco, or they want just but it's like we can still, I guarantee we could sit down and we could sit down and find
find a common thread
find
right?
a chord progression that happened with
Yeah.
Brahms, like
Yeah.
all the way back. Or and it's like, because there's certain things that we resonate with as humans. And I think that's what's so great about music, because it's also such an it's so open to discussion and to being congenial, and not creating like a lot of anxiety around. There's so many topics that cause such angst with people that nowadays just opinions in general tend to be more polarized, and I think music doesn't do that. And so
Yeah.
it's such a great
Breaks down
place.
so many barriers.
Yeah, and language. Oh, excuse me, language. Like language,
Hit in the
but even, I mean, I think that classical music has even that advantage over some of the pop songs. It's like there's not even a lot of times there's not even a language that you have to speak in order to understand what the music is about, given a minute, So
you brought up Bach a moment ago, and you played some earlier.
yeah,
And we also listened to Jethro Tull.
yeah,
And
right.
Jethro Tull does a rendition of Bowie,
Yeah.
which, if I can get this right, I believe their rendition is in E minor, written for the lute.
Lute.
Yeah. So,
I can't play that.
You can't play lute?
No. Would be really cool.
It would be really
if you've never
cool.
heard like a really good lute performance, really, really cool.
Yeah.
But
So,
we can
Jethro
talk
Tull
about it.
does the same thing with the compositional approach. And again, they deal with so much orchestration, and really bringing in an orchestra, a symphony, to perform
Yeah.
all of that with them. That it was just a great crossover for me to bring in the things I love and those components of rock and roll into that world of just being something that was easily accessible.
Yeah.
I mean, would you
Oh
agree
yeah,
to that?
totally. And I mean, I think as you kind of look back a little to classic rock and to kind of like the beginnings of these great artists and their feeding grounds, it's just incredible. I mean, it was such a lush atmosphere. I mean, such an incredibly saturated
Yeah.
pool of what was expected of a song.
Yeah,
And
everyone was paying attention.
paying attention. That's it. And just and it was like, and that's what I mean. Like music, just that it was just such a cool thing. So yeah, no, there is definite ways to kind of bring people across the divide, I would say, and to really kind of talk about music on a totally different level. So.
Well, Stephen, you know what? We have kept these people awake, blabbing, which you and I again can
We
do
can
all
do,
night.
Lord knows.
I've got one last question, and
Right.
I can't believe that tonight I saved it for the last question, because it's something that I get to in every episode, because I just love gear. I love instruments. There is hardly a bad instrument out there. I mean, there actually are, but in this case, and I don't need you to go on and on for days, because we're going to do a standalone video, particularly about this violin, because I love it so much. But can you show us and give us a little bit of background about your instrument?
Well, this is a beautiful copy of a Guarneri del Gesù, an Italian instrument. There were two like major families that built violins in Italy that kind of created this mystique surrounding them. And this is a copy of a Del Gesù and Stradivarius, which was probably the name that a lot of people will recognize. This is not one of those. This is it's not been confirmed, but this is most likely a Viome from the French school, mid 1800s, who was known for incredible instruments. I love this violin. I found it in Green Valley, and so many people, I don't know if there are any Tucson people watching tonight, but so many people in Tucson helped me buy this back when I was concertmaster there. So it's an incredibly spectacular instrument for me to own and for me to have.
I mean, they made it possible.
They made
for you
it possible,
to play
because
that,
it's impossible
right?
for most artists that you see when they come in and they write down, oh, they have this Strad. It's not theirs. A lot of artists will be given violins on loan for their life. So a lot of people have bought an instrument as an investment, and that investment has never really changed over the years, because no instruments like the Stradivarius are being really built like that anymore. So it's quite astounding.
I might be spreading a rumor and something that isn't legit, and who knows? It was late in the evening, but do I recall something about a possibility of the top on that violin being something, or should we not chat about that? Do we just don't really know?
It
but
just depends. I mean, again, it costs a lot of money to get these things appraised, and so my violin maker was like, the top looks like it was existing from an older instrument, which is very common. Instruments broke even back then. There were a lot of wars happening between 1700 and 1850.
yeah, a few.
And so like, let's say only the top remained, and then a violin maker in a big violin shop would create the violin around the top. So they would use the measurements and then build another instrument, and then add their own scroll. So each violin maker had their own distinct way of making a scroll, which, I mean, we can go into.
Yeah, no, and we will. It's going to be a standalone video, so keep an eye out. We'll keep
that'll be fun.
there. So for now, I want to thank Stephen Moeckel for his time this evening. I want to thank all of you, the viewers, for piping in and watching this evening. I hope you've really enjoyed it. Looking back at what we've done tonight, so many things stand out. But one of the big ones for me is that Glenn Stalcott piece, The Unreal Dwelling. And to reflect back and understand that a piece like that can be written today, that, it sounds classical, and that's why I brought up that whole definition at that point, but it really is timeless and something that, just grabs at everything I love as a musician. So again, Glenn, thanks for writing and composing that piece. Thanks for sharing it with the world. And Stephen, thank you for performing it for the world and getting it out as, a world premiere on this show. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And that you have an album coming out. So we'll hopefully we'll see what the video does. We'll hopefully get Stephen in here again, and we'll deal with the album. Next week, you guys, hopefully a few people will stick around and come back next week to see what we've got. It'll be a total surprise. Believe me, we will have a lot of fun with it, no matter what it might be. And you know what? For now, we're going to... the endings are always a little bit difficult, and I've got a few different ways that we're doing it. So we're going to try a little bit tonight, see what happens. I hope everybody has enjoyed. Stephen, again, thank you very much for everything. It's been amazing. And cheers from the Outback. This has been the Way Back Sessions.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Studio B. Stephen, what an awesome, buddy. Thank you. That was so much fun. It was I hope everybody had as much fun as I did.
Yeah. Well, I certainly it felt like any other performance day to me. So
it's like nerve-wracking.
I was a nervous wreck all day. So
and I think that when we're doing, everybody that's come in the room and all the performances we've had, everybody said that.
Yeah.
That it is very much like a live performance and it is happening. But I think people have heard us blabbing all night enough. Do we have an end clip? Did I prepare an end clip for tonight? Let's go to it.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Good night,
everyone.
everyone.
I don't know if everyone's watching
All right.
anymore. They can hear us or whatever, but
awesome. Thanks.